Hey everybody, another awesome week. Come follow me. This is the last part of Acts. It's gone by so quick. And there's actually there's 7 chapters, 23, so 22 through to 28, which you think 6 chapters, but if you count them, there's actually 7. It's just how math works weird sometimes. But anyway, totally worth reading all of them, and we cannot simply cover everything this week. So again, I've prayerfully picked out some points that I think that you'll really enjoy and get something from, because they do apply to us in this day. So we're going to start in Acts 22 and just sort of break it down again. Anyway, if you're going to teach this as a lesson in Sunday school, this is going to be tough. So I would suggest picking 2 or 3 things that really tie in with what the people that you teach need. You're not going to be able to cover all of it. It's just not going to happen. You don't have the time, and it's really up to the individual to go study anyway. So encourage that as well. But anyway, Acts 22. So to give some context to Acts 22, you need to go back to Acts 21 because you didn't actually cover that much last week. So basically in 21, Paul needs to go back to Jerusalem. We left off in our insights of when they had much sorrowing of him going back of his missionary for all the countries that he travelled to. So he's now going back to Jerusalem, and on his way there's some things that happen, but basically he gets recognised. This is 21, 28, and they're crying out hey, that's that guy that's been going around preaching everywhere. We don't like him. So back in Jerusalem. So they're like, ew, no. So the chief captain took him, and he gets arrested and bound up. And then in 37, he was led to the castle of the area, or jail or whatever it was. And he said, may I speak unto thee? And the captains are like, you can speak Greek. I thought you're an Egyptian, And he's like, no, I'm from Tarsus. I'm like a Roman citizen. I speak Greek, yes. And so they're all like, oh, okay, so I want to speak. So they're like, okay, so you can speak. So the last verse of 21 reads, and when he had given him license, so he's allowed to speak, Paul stood on the stairs and beckoned with a hand unto the people. And when there was made a great silence, he spake unto them in the Hebrew tongue, saying, and then it cuts off, and then we enter into chapter 22. This is what he's saying. So, interestingly, we can learn that he speaks Greek and Roman, and probably a bit of Egyptian, and also Hebrew. So, smart guy. This is pretty cool. So, we're going to go into 22. And in 22, he recounts his conversion story on the road to Damascus. So he does this actually twice in this week's reading. So here you'll see it, and in chapter 26 you'll see it. It's a powerful retelling. But he also points out some really, really good things. So starts in verse 6 where he's like, first of all, he addresses everybody because it says, he spake saying, so he addresses everyone, all of you that are here. And of course, when they hear him talking in Hebrew, they're like, oh, that's our language. We better quiet and listen because we can understand him. He must know the people. He's got to know someone to be able to speak that because he's a Roman and he speaks Hebrew. So let's listen. So it gives it more gravitas. He calls himself a Jew born in Tarsus. Gives his history of who he is, why he's there, who he belongs to, and then tells his conversion story. This is important, and that starts in verse 6 and goes through up to about 17-ish. So, again, one of the things is he talks about Ananias who comes in, about what happened to him, and we know this because we covered it, and he just bears testimony of how sweet that is. But if you look in 14 through sort of 16, which is just a couple of verses there, we can learn so much from there. So that reads, and he said, the God of our fathers hath chosen thee, that thou shouldst know his will, and see that just one, and shouldst hear the voice of his mouth. Now this is what Ananias is saying to Paul. Now we didn't know this before, we just knew that Ananias came in and talked to him. So this is what he said, according to Paul, recorded by Luke. So mostly correct, I would assume. And in 15, for thou shalt be his witness unto all men of what thou hast seen and heard. And then in 16, and now why tarriest thou? Arise and be baptized, and wash away thy sins, calling on the name of the Lord. And that's what he's was told to him. So he's now sharing this message with this group of people. This applies to you too. And this applies to us now as well. So then it says in 17, when it came to pass, when he was come again to Jerusalem, he prayed in the temple, he was in a trance, and he was told to go and do this and go and teach. And that happened, and then in 24, the chief captain brings him forth, and they bind him, and he says, actually, I'm Roman, and then they're like, oh, you're Roman. Oh, better let you go then, because we're not supposed to keep you. So we're going to pass you on, and they pass him off to someone else, and we'll cover that in the next one. He gets passed off a lot, because like, oh, we don't want to deal with you because the Jews say you're breaking the law, but actually you're Roman, and according to Roman law, you're not, which is the law of the day prevailing, because it is under Roman rule at this time, even though it's not meeting Jewish law, even though he wasn't breaking the Jewish law, they were just accusing him of breaking that. So no local politician's going to want to get involved in this, and it actually ends up going up the chain so high, he ends up speaking to Herod, Herod's grandson, King Agrippa. Grandson, great-grandson, something like that, but King Agrippa, he ends up talking to him. But what can we learn from these verses in 22? Well, bearing witness. Now, Joseph Smith also found great comfort in these verses, because no matter what had been going on for Paul, and we know that Joseph Smith went through a lot too, you're not going to stop bearing witness, no matter where you are, how threatened you are, what the situation is. You know what you know, and you're not giving that up. So he does this powerfully and boldly, both chapters, 22 and 26. He speaks of living life with Christ and tells of how it doesn't actually make it easier, but what it does do, because life will always be equally as hard with Christ or without Christ, but the difference is you face it together with Christ, and that's what makes it easier. And that you have someone to go to, you have someone there that's talking to you and guiding you rather than being out adrift alone. So you're not alone. You face it together with Christ, and you have hope and trust in a bigger plan that you can't see yet, but you know that he does. If we allow it, these facts bring peace. It's true. So from this retelling in both chapters, we identify some vital truths for all of us. Them, Paul, the people he was talking to then, and everyone that's read that since. And we're going to read it. It still applies to us. Here they are. So, we are chosen. We choose to be chosen. That's how short. We follow Christ. We choose to follow Christ. We're choosing to be chosen. Simple as that. We learn his will. We hear him. We witness of him. We go forth speaking Christ. We turn to him and walk a covenant path with him. There is always something you can do to bear witness of Christ. So how do you do this? And how can you be more bold in doing this? How can you be more bold in doing this? There's always opportunities if you're going to church regularly to be able to be your testimony. You can do it at the end of lessons. You can do it in the middle of a lesson as a comment. You can do it on fast and testimony meetings. You can do it when you give a talk. There are so many opportunities. I'm not talking about those ones. How can you do it in everyday life in a better way? And we can all improve in this. I could certainly improve in this. But I always like to look at those particular verses of what Ananias said to Paul. And it's just that, the God of our fathers has chosen it. You are chosen. You choose to be this, and you're going to be great at it. And he wants you to know his will, he wants you to know the plan. So you know what you're doing, and you got to listen to him. And then you go out and you'll be a witness, and don't mess around about it. Go get out there. He's always got a work for you to do. And at any time you get stuck, and I love that in verse 16, calling on the name of the Lord, just ask. And I did that this morning. Particularly difficult last evening, and yesterday. But anyway, call on the Lord. What do I do? How do I fix this? How do I work through this? How do I get my brain in the right place with all of this that's going on and how I'm feeling? So, bearing witness, it's that clinging to it and living it as best you can, and we are far from perfect at it. So, how do you do it? I'm interested. How do you do this, and how could you be more bold in this? I think I just need to do it more often focus. And I do have a great focus on it, but I could be better. I could give up some, Netflix time and have some more Christ time, I think. There's one of the things I could do. So there's definitely some things in there. So I'm interested. What do you got? Maybe there's some good suggestions that some other people can pick up. So drop them in the comments. All right, here we're going to go look over at Acts 23. I'll see you there.